get a pretty similar kind of response. And then I got another one where I asked captains of industry within a particular sector. It might be, the US airline industry, for example. Put your hands up if you're going to generate above industry returns. And of course, all the CEOs will put their hands up in that situation when we know that that cannot possibly be true, and that some of these individuals are going to make decisions based on that level of confidence that could well have material consequences for their business. So just to get into this idea of confidence, take one individual from Wall Street, Jimmy Cain, CEO of Bear Stearns. Jimmy Cain had about $1 billion in Bear Stearns stock in 2007. He was one of the stars of Wall Street. Meteoric rise to the top at Bear Stearns, so much so that in 2003, Fortune magazine named him as the leading financial executive in America and Bear Stearns as the most admired financial institution in the United States. This is how Jimmy reacted to that news. Jimmy says, well, we're hitting on all 99 cylinders, so you have to ask yourself, what can we do better? And I just can't decide what that might be. Everyone says when the markets turn around, we're going to suffer, but let me tell you, we're going to surprise some people this time around. Bear Stearns is a great place to be. Okay, so this is just a matter of a few years before Bear Stearns and Lehman under Dick Fuld helped trigger the global financial crisis. Now, you might look back and you might think to yourself, well, that's, this is all in hindsight, and how would you know ahead of time whether or not this person is going to be susceptible to what we've seen? And I think I can show you in advance the conditions in which people will be susceptible to hubris, and I think together we can work on some techniques to manage that ahead of time, because I certainly don't agree with the statement here that it's only hubris if I fail, because of course that's too late. But there's one hurdle that you're going to have to overcome before you can be receptive to what I have to say, and that is that it's always going to happen to the other guy. Whenever I present evidence to an entrepreneur that says, look, why would you want to start a new business when we know that 2/3 of new businesses fail within 5 years or so? The answer always is, that's the other guy. It's always going to happen to the other guy. There's something special, unique, remarkable about me, what I'm doing, our team, that's going to help us overcome this. It always happens to the other guy. And I want you to please listen to the words of Eliot Spitzer. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Eliot Spitzer. He was touted as a future Democratic president of the United States. He was the Attorney General of New York State and aggressively pursued white-collar crime on Wall Street, including the American International Group. Okay, and Spitzer was a star graduate of Harvard Law School, and he was asked to give the valedictory speech at Harvard Law School back in 2005. And this is in part what he said. I think if you look at the CEOs and others who have been involved in most of the corporate scandals, they begin to think that somehow the laws didn't apply to them. The moral boundaries that every one of us understands didn't apply to them. And this was captured in a brilliant T-shirt, and the gist of the T-shirt was that hubris is terminal. Now, this is just a matter of months before Spitzer got caught up in the prostitution scandal that ruined his family and ruined his career in public life. So the age-old dilemma is, of course, we're going to need to stay confident, but keep it in check. And I've used this photograph here because I think it brings us back to home. I mean, Eddie Groves, a fantastically talented individual, okay? He's developed a superb business. He was named in 2006 he was number one in BRW's Young Rich list. You know, you had to admire what he had built, you know, up to that point. But there was a line that he crossed, wasn't there? There was a line that he crossed from being the supremely confident CEO of ABC Learning Centres to an individual that had an out-of-control ego. And that's the line that I've been trying to identify, you know, in my research. And it's the line that I'm going to work on with you. Because I don't know in this instance when Eddie crossed the line. All I do is that he did cross the line, and that had profound consequences, not just for his business, but also himself and, you know, the business community in Brisbane. You know, it's a real shame that ABC ended up the way that it did. So how do you know in advance? Where are you going to catch it? And this is a slide that that comes from a colleague of mine in Boulder, Colorado, in Jim Collins. You may have heard of Jim. He's written books, Built to Last and Good to Great. And he believes that the seeds of business failure are always sown in the early days of hubris born out of success. That the way in which executives respond to success is going to predict the extent to which they end up down here capitulating on the path to irrelevance or death. All right, so I'm going to make this very simple. I spent a long time researching this, but I'm going to make this very simple and say that there are two tricks to it. And the tricks are absolute common sense. And the first is you don't want to get ahead of yourself. You want to be clear about what your abilities are, not the emperor with parading around without any clothes on, with nobody to tell him that he's stark naked and he doesn't look like Brad Pitt. And so the idea, as we've talked about earlier today, is once we know what our abilities are, then we know when it's time for us to step forward, which is our normal mode of doing business as a CEO. Step back, you know, recognise that as an entrepreneur, we're great at discovering opportunities, but we're not as good at managing them. Or step aside, which says that we've got to solve this problem alongside somebody else. It's our complementary skills that's going to help us do this, whether it's Steve Jobs and his financial accountants at Apple or someone else. So knowing our abilities. And the second one is knowing our situation. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever been in a situation where you've really kidded yourself about your situation. You've thought that you couldn't lose, that you had all the bases covered, and certainly a lot of the advertising and a lot of the sentiment that I see in the United States revolves around kidding ourselves about our situation. So this is an advertisement for Cialis, and I mean, you know, here we are. I have a couple of people sitting in bathtubs with faucets that are disconnected from any kind of plumbing device, you know, overlooking the Pacific Northwest, which is freezing even in the most balmy of evenings in summer, and being concerned that there might be 4-hour erections going on or anything like that. I mean, you know, let's be real about our situation, and how do we know how to be real about our situation?